When I tell you Superman wins in a fight against Conquest, and it isn't that close, I'm not dismissing Conquest. I'm telling you something about Superman. Here's what you need to understand about Conquest. He's not just a villain, he's not just a heavy the show throws at the main character to raise the stakes. He's the Viltrumite Empire's last resort. When every other option has been tried, when a planet won't comply, when the local enforcer can't close the deal, they send Conquest. He's what you send when you're out of ideas and you need it handled. He's been fighting wars for thousands of years. He survived a genetically engineered plague that killed 99.9% of his entire species. He came to Earth and fought Mark Grayson, Invincible, one of the most powerful beings on the planet, and he nearly killed him. And when it was finally over, when they brought him down, they had to bury him 6 miles underground in a block of steel just to make sure he stayed there. Let's lay this out properly. Conquest is a Viltrumite. If you haven't watched Invincible, here's what that means. The Viltrumites are a species of near-invincible warriors who've spent millennia conquering planets across the universe, super strength, super speed, flight, healing factors that would make most comic book characters feel inadequate, and they don't need ships to get around. They can hold their breath for weeks and fly through space on their own. No suit, no vessel, just them within that species, which is already operating at a tier most fictional universes don't even have a ceiling for. Conquest is second most powerful Viltrumite alive. The only one above him is Thrag, the Grand Regent of the entire Empire, and Thrag is functionally the final boss of the whole show. So when we talk about Conquest, we're talking about the second scariest thing in his universe. Superman in this video is James Gunn's Superman, the 2025 film, David Corenswet's Clark Kent, not the DCEU, not the comics, not any other version. If a feat isn't in that film, it's not in this video. 3 years into his public debut, undefeated. Kryptonian physiology running on yellow sun radiation. The most powerful metahuman on Earth, and everyone in his world knows it. Here's the argument. Superman's physical ceiling is higher than Conquest's. His toolkit is broader. And the one thing Conquest relies on, getting close, staying close, wearing you down through sustained physical dominance, is exactly where Superman beats him. This isn't going to be close. Here's why. To understand why this matchup goes the way it does, you need to actually understand what Conquest, not just that he is a strong Viltrumite bad guy. Deeper than that, the Viltrumites went through something called the Scourge virus, a biological weapon engineered specifically to target their DNA. It worked. It killed 99.9% of their entire species already, in a population of billions reduced almost to nothing. The few who survived weren't just lucky, they were the toughest, most resilient members of an already near invincible species, the ones whose biology fought off a weapon literally designed to kill them. Conquest was one of them. He didn't just survive the virus though. After it, also when the Empire was at its most vulnerable, he kept fighting. He was single-handedly conquering planets when there were almost no Viltrumites left to back him up. Think about what that means. This isn't someone who was powerful and then got more powerful in a safe environment. This is someone who was already one of the best, watched almost everything he knew get wiped out, and just kept going. Alone. He has a cybernetic right arm. It's there throughout the animated series. You can see it every time he's on screen. The show doesn't walk you through how he lost the original, but the arm is a physical modification on a species that doesn't normally need them. Whatever took that arm, it took it from a fully powered Viltrumite. That tells you something about what he's been through. What makes Conquest genuinely different from other Viltrumite heavies isn't just the power level, it's the psychology. Most Viltrumites fight for the Empire. They believe in the mission, conquest, expansion, the species above all else. Conquest doesn't. He's not a true believer. He fights because he likes it. The violence is the point. The Empire is just a vehicle that gives him more of it. The other Viltrumites are scared of him. Not professionally cautious, actually scared. Nobody talks to him. He's been like this for thousands of years, and nobody has ever figured out how to turn it off because it can't be turned off. There's no version of Conquest who decides the fight isn't worth it and backs down. In the animated series, there's a moment, this is unique to the show. Not in the comics, where he basically tells you he's lonely. That the fight is the only thing that makes him feel connected to anything. That's the character. It's not just cruelty, it's need. He doesn't have an off switch because the fight is the only thing filling the gap where an off switch would go. Now let's talk about what he actually does in the show, because the specifics matter here. Season 3. Conquest arrives on Earth. Mark fights him. Oliver and Eve jump in to help because the alternative is watching Mark die. It doesn't matter, the Conquest handles them both. Eve almost gets killed. She comes back and breaking a mental block, and she resurrects with new capabilities. But the point is, Conquest practically killed her as a side errand while the main fight was still happening. Here's where it gets important. Before she dies, Eve hits Conquest with an energy beam and it burns all his skin off, nearly finishes him. The single time anything outside of Mark's direct fist came close to ending that fight, it was a ranged energy attack. File that away. We're coming back to it. Mark wins eventually. With broken arms, broken legs, he beats Conquest by slamming his head into the ground until it stops being a fair question. When Cecil recovers what's left of him, he puts Conquest in a steel alloy block buried 6 miles underground. Start of season 4, he wakes up, flies out, on his own, nobody helped him. The block and 6 miles of Earth weren't enough. That's the baseline. In the comics, there's a second fight during the Viltrumite War where Conquest dies. Mark suffocates him, and the effort puts Mark in a coma for months. That hasn't happened in the show yet, so we're not using it as primary evidence. It's worth knowing the comics version ends there, but the show hasn't caught up. James Gunn's Superman made his public debut 3 years before the film begins. In those 3 years, he didn't lose, not once. By the time the film starts, he's already established as the most powerful metahuman on Earth, and the world has had 3 years to try to get used to that fact. David Cornswit's Clark is worth describing properly because the characterization matters for a fight breakdown. The all-star Superman influence is all over this film. Clark is defined by the Kents, not Krypton. He's hopeful in a way that isn't naive. It's a choice he keeps making under pressure. The film opens with him intervening in a military conflict in a foreign country, alone, because it was the right thing to do. He's not passive, he doesn't wait. What can he actually do? Let's go through it specifically, because we're only using what's in this film. Super strength, confirmed with multiple on-screen feats. He holds up a full collapsing building with his bare hands. He physically restrains a kaiju mid-rampage, both in the film, both on screen. Flight, invulnerability. Accelerated solar healing, shown explicitly in story relevant. He absorbs yellow sun radiation to recover from damage during and after the kryptonite poisoning. Heat vision, confirmed, including a spinning technique he uses against armored opponents. Super breath, used during the film's most extreme sequence. X-ray vision, super speed. The film shows him traveling from the Fortress of Solitude in the Arctic to Metropolis in what appears to be moments. We're not putting a number on that, but it's fast. Now, he loses to Ultraman in the film, and if you're building a case for Conquest, that's where you're going to point. Let's dismantle the theory right now. Ultraman is a clone of Superman with the exact same power set, created by Lex Luthor, and here's the thing. Lex spent 3 years documenting Superman, every fight, every move, every pattern. He built a complete record of how Superman fights and used it to remotely guide Ultraman in real time during both confrontations. Superman wasn't losing to an equal, he was losing to himself on a delay controlled by one of the smartest people on the planet who had 3 years of prep and perfect information. Once Krypto destroys Luthor's camera drones and cuts the feed, fair fight. Superman wins. The losses are narrative architecture. They're not a power ceiling, and more importantly for this video, Conquest has none of what made Ultraman dangerous. No database, no Lex in his ear, no 3 years of documented patterns, nothing. And this is early career Superman, 3 years in, not at his peak. The most honest version of this argument acknowledges that. It still doesn't close the gap. Now let's discuss strength, because it's the foundation of this whole fight. Conquest's benchmark is clear. It took Invincible at full power, and a fully powered Adam Eve working together to defeat him. If you know the show, you know what that means. Mark Grayson at full output is world-threatening on his own. Eve is one of the most powerful beings on the planet. Together, they barely got there. That's what we're working with for Conquest. Above that combined threshold, he's untested. Below it, he dominates. Superman's strength in the film is harder to put a number on, and we're not going to try, but the feats are specific. He holds up a full collapsing building with his bare hands, and he does this the day after kryptonite poisoning has left him with broken bones and perforated organs. Think about what you're watching there. A man who is actively being poisoned, who is physically damaged, who is holding a building, then factor in what he looks like at full health. He also physically restrains a kaiju mid-rampage. Neither of those has a direct equivalent in Conquest's feat record. That's not a knock on Conquest, his numbers are extraordinary. It's just that the upper end of what Superman demonstrates in this film is operating at a different scale. Edge, Superman, real, not marginal, but Conquest can absolutely hit hard enough to make this fight hurt, so don't mistake the Edge for a shutout. Speed is trickier, and it's the one category where intellectual honesty means admitting it's close. Viltrumites travel interstellar distances under their own power. They fly through space. And in the animated series, Conquest keeps pace with Invincible across an extended citywide fight. The speed is extreme. We just don't have a clean number to attach to it, and we're not going to invent one. Superman's in-film speed is also demonstrated without a specific figure. Arctic to Metropolis in what appears to be moments, fast enough to intercept close-range threats before they reach civilians. The implication is significant even without a measurement. This one is genuinely close, maybe too close to call cleanly. And what matters for the fight outcome isn't really who's faster in a straight line, it's whether the speed gap is large enough for one fighter to simply avoid the other's attacks. The answer there is probably that neither of them can run from this. They're in the same conversation on speed. Move-ons. Durability is where it gets decisive. Conquest is nigh invulnerable. He has a real healing factor. Why, he took a prolonged, brutal assault from Mark Grayson. We're talking face-to-pulp territory extended over an enormous fight, and stayed in it. His durability is exceptional by almost any standard, but he has scars, he has a cybernetic arm because something took his original one. He heals from most things, but he doesn't fully reset. Damage accumulates across a long fight. And the season 3 sequence showed that clearly this Mark doesn't beat him with a single devastating blow. He gets there by stacking damage faster than Conquest's healing can clear it. It's a war of attrition that eventually tips. Superman's damage record in the film only comes from one source, Ultraman, his exact clone with his exact powers, guided in real time by a genius with 3 years of data. Even then, the perforated organs and broken bones didn't stop him from using super breath to escape a black hole while kryptonite poisoned with passengers. I mean, there's no scene in the film where something less than his direct equal leaves a mark on him without kryptonite involved. No one has permanently marked Superman. Conquest has permanent marks. That distinction matters enormously in a long fight. One fighter heals toward baseline. The other doesn't fully get there. That compounds. Edge, Superman. And in a fight at this level, the edge and durability might be the most important edge of all, because this fight goes long. This is Conquest's best angle. Let's give it its due. Thousands of years of actual warfare, not sparring sessions, not training simulations. He was out there conquering planets when there were almost no other Viltrumites left, solo against whatever those planets could throw at him. The experience is real, and it's accumulated over a time span that's genuinely hard to process. He hasn't just been in a lot of fights, he's been in more fights than most civilizations have had, and he's not just experienced, he's tactically intelligent in a specific way that makes him more dangerous than raw power alone would suggest. In the animated series, he uses Eve as a pressure point deliberately. He doesn't just attack Mark, he attacks what Mark cares about. He understands that the most effective thing you can do to a hero isn't necessarily hit them the hardest, it's threaten what they're trying to protect. He targets civilians during the fight, drags the confrontation through populated areas, forces Mark to engage on Conquest's terms rather than his own. That's not just savagery with a plan stapled on, that's real tactical intelligence operating in a live fight. He's reading his opponent and making adjustments. He also has no honor system slowing him down, no hesitation, no mercy, no moment where he considers pulling back. Every second of a fight with Conquest is a second where he's trying to end you. Against most opponents, this combination, millennia of experience, like tactical intelligence, zero restraint, is the whole fight. You don't beat that profile on will alone, but here's the ceiling on what experience can actually do. Superman's heat vision is a problem Conquest has genuinely never had to solve. His entire game, everything those thousands of years built, is predicated on getting close and staying close. Physical dominance through sustained contact. You can't do that against a ranged weapon. You can't just walk through heat vision the way you walk through a punch. It's not a harder version of a problem he's already faced. It's a different category of problem entirely. And here's what we know from the animated series. Eve's energy beam burned all his skin off, nearly finished him. The one time something came closest to ending that fight outside of Mark's direct assault, it was a ranged, energy-based attack. That's the blueprint. Superman has a version of that attack, more precise, more sustained, fully under his control, built into his power set permanently. Heat vision against a fighter who has already demonstrated catastrophic vulnerability to that category of attack isn't a theoretical advantage. It's confirmed. Conquest's combat experience doesn't include a counter to this. He hasn't trained for it because he's never needed to. The Viltrumites he's fought don't have it. The planets he's conquered didn't have it. This is genuinely new. Superman's combat IQ in the film is still developing. He's 3 years in, but he adapts in the moment he flies the engineer into the upper atmosphere to neutralize her nanites when ground level fighting isn't working. He uses the spinning heat vision technique against armored groups. He uses super breath against the black hole. He's not just a power set that absorbs damage and hits back. He improvises with his toolkit. One last thing about Conquest's experience, and this is important, his sadism makes him sloppy. He fights to feel something. He prolongs fights deliberately. He monologues. He savors. We've already talked about how in the animated series he's essentially admitted the fight is the only thing filling the gap where connection should be. Against Invincible, who hits below Superman's ceiling, he can afford to slow down and enjoy it. He has enough of a margin to play around and still win. Against Superman, who can end this fast when he commits? That habit is the most expensive thing Conquest has developed in thousands of years of fighting. This is where the matchup stops being close. Let's start with Conquest. His cybernetic right arm is a real physical target. Something took his original arm from a fully powered Viltrumite and he replaced it with a mechanical one. In a fight at this level, that arm is something Superman can prioritize. Break it and you've removed a weapon and forced Conquest to adapt mid-fight with one arm down. It's not a fight ender on its own, don't overstate it, but it's a genuine pressure point that Superman can reach with his bare hands. More importantly, Conquest accumulates damage and he doesn't heal instantly. The Season 3 fight proved this more clearly than anything else. Mark didn't beat him with a single decisive move. He beat him by stacking damage faster than Conquest's healing could clear it over an extended fight that got progressively uglier. The maths eventually caught up. Now run that same equation with Superman doing the hitting. Superman hits harder. He has heat vision, which we've just confirmed is catastrophic for Conquest because Eve's beam nearly finished him, and that was the same category of attack. Superman can sustain the assault longer because his durability appears more absolute. If Conquest's weakness against Mark was that sustained damage eventually overwhelms his healing, what happens when the damage is coming faster from someone who heals better, hits harder, and has a ranged energy weapon ready every second of the fight? The answer isn't close, and then there's the psychology. Conquest loves the fight. He needs it to mean something. He prolongs it deliberately. Against Superman, that's a liability. Every extra second he spends savoring this is a second Superman can land heat vision, target that arm, and stack more damage before the healing catches up. The thing that's made Conquest so dangerous for thousands of years, his enjoyment of the process, works against him here specifically. Now, Superman's weaknesses. Kryptonite is real, and it's confirmed in this film. Lex Luthor forces Metamorpho to synthesize it, uses him to transmute part of his own body into kryptonite, and when it contacts Superman, he's rendered powerless. It's a significant, legitimate weakness, not narrative window dressing. It actually works, but here's the thing. The only way Lex could get kryptonite in this film was to use a metahuman with matter manipulation powers to engineer it from scratch. He couldn't just go find it himself. He needed Metamorpho specifically. Conquest has no Metamorpho. He has no matter manipulation metahuman who can synthesize exotic minerals on demand. What Whatever the practical reality of kryptonite's availability in Gunn's world, the relevant fact for this fight is simple. Conquest walks in with his fists. That's his full toolkit. The one weapon that could neutralize Superman's advantage completely requires a specific set of resources that Conquest doesn't have and can't replicate. He can still hurt Superman without kryptonite. The film establishes it's physically possible, even if it takes Superman's exact clone to do it seriously. But can land hits is a long way from can finish the fight. Conquest needs to close this in the physical exchange alone, against someone who heals, hits harder, and has a ranged energy weapon that's already shown to be catastrophic for him specifically. The asymmetry is total. Superman's main weakness requires resources Conquest doesn't have access to. Conquest's main weaknesses, accumulated damage, the arm, the tendency to overcommit, are things Superman can exploit with his bare hands and his eyes, no prep required, no special conditions, just the fight. Yes, there's a version of this argument that says Conquest wins on mentality, that you can't break him, that near death makes him sharper, not slower. That he's been fighting for so long and survived so much that the psychological dimension of this fight swings his way. It's not a stupid argument. His sadism and bloodlust ran so extreme that other Viltrumites, a species of near invincible conquerors not exactly known for being squeamish, were actually scared of him. He doesn't break. He's never broken. The season 3 fight should have killed him, and instead, it just made him more dangerous when he woke up. But here's the thing about Gunn's Superman. He doesn't break either, and it's not because he's just physically tough. It's something harder to disrupt than toughness. Right near the end of the film, Clark explains to Lex Luthor what it means to be human, what he learned from the Kents, why he keeps getting up. It's not a fight scene. It's not adrenaline or stubbornness or some survival instinct kicking in. It's a value system. He has a specific answer to, why am I still doing this that doesn't depend on how much it hurts? You can't beat that out of someone. It's not located in his body. Conquest's psychological edge works specifically against opponents who want to stop fighting when it gets bad enough. Superman isn't that. The worse it gets, the more specific his reasons for continuing become. That's not the same as being hard to hurt. It's harder to defeat than that. There's also this. Conquest's need for the fight to feel like something might actually be a liability here in a very specific way. He fights because he needs to feel connected. Against Invincible, he had enough of a power margin to control the pace, to slow things down, to make it last. Against Superman, who can hit back at a level Conquest has genuinely never experienced, what happens the moment it stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like a problem he can't solve? His whole history says he doubles down. Now, in most fights, that's the right call. Against Superman, doubling down means taking more heat vision. It means more accumulated damage. It means the thing that's always saved him becomes the thing that finishes him. Let's put this together. Superman's raw physical ceiling edges Conquest's across strength and durability. This is early career Superman, 3 years in, not at his peak, and it's still the case. You don't need to do any creative interpretation to get there. That's just what the film shows. Superman's toolkit introduces a problem Conquest has never had to solve in thousands of years of warfare. Heat vision, ranged, energy-based. And we know it's catastrophic for Conquest specifically because we've already seen what happens when that category of attack lands on him. Eve's beam nearly finished him. Superman has a better, more precise, more sustained version of that attack available every second of the fight. This isn't theoretical, it's already been tested on Conquest's body. We know the results. Conquest's weaknesses, the accumulated damage, the cybernetic arm, the tendency to overcommit and savor, are all things Superman can exploit with what he already has. No prep. No exotic resources, just the fight. Superman's primary weakness requires something Conquest simply doesn't have. Kryptonite had to be engineered specifically for this film, using a metahuman with matter manipulation powers. Conquest doesn't have that. His winning condition doesn't exist in this matchup. Superman does. That's the fight before it even starts. I know what the counter is. Conquest almost killed Invincible multiple times. How is he losing here? Because Mark Grayson at the time of those fights is not Superman. That's the entire argument. It took Mark's full power and Eve's full power working together to beat Conquest, and it barely worked. Superman's ceiling, even early career, is above what Mark was putting out in those fights. The evidence for Conquest's dominance is real. What it's evidence of just isn't a Superman level ceiling, and the other counter, Superman lost twice in this film. Both losses required a clone of himself with his exact powers guided in real time by one of the smartest people on the planet using 3 years of accumulated fight data. Remove any one of those variables and the fight goes differently. Conquest has none of them. In a straight fight against his equal with no data advantage, Superman's record is 1-0. Superman wins. It's not a blowout in spectacle. Conquest lands real shots. The fight goes ugly places. It doesn't feel settled until it's settled. But the outcome isn't in doubt. Superman's ceiling is higher, his toolkit is broader, his primary weakness is protected by circumstances Conquest can't change, and Conquest's best argument, experience, and physical dominance runs directly into the one fighter who has a better physical foundation and a ranged weapon that's already been proven catastrophic on his specific physiology. It's not even that close. Here's the thing about Conquest though, he makes it feel close. Like, that's what the show does, you know, it builds him up so carefully, makes his arrival feel so inevitable that your threat calibration shifts. You forget there's a ceiling because everything below it has already been handled. That's actually the most interesting thing about this matchup. Not the result itself, but why it surprises people. Conquest is genuinely one of the scariest fighters in his universe, but he's not in a universe with Superman in it. There are matchups where Conquest wins, other powerhouses where the toolkit gap closes, and the experience advantage is the deciding factor. This just isn't one of them. If you disagree, and I genuinely mean this, make the case in the comments. Tell me what I got wrong, because I can't think of one case where this goes the other way. Like and subscribe if you want more of these. I'll see you in the next one.